Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night from when you're watching this video. This is John from IT Skills Academy with yet another video. Today, I present to you yet another pharmacy management system. I'll take you through how I created this simple pharmacy management system using PHP and MySQLi. To make it simple, I'll break it into several episodes as follows. In the first episode, I'll basically be introducing you to the system and also show you the basic dashboard that we'll be using for the system. In the second episode, we are going to set up the database. Then in the third episode, we'll be creating the dashboard now. And in the fourth episode, we'll be adding the patients. Fifth, we'll be adding or managing the patients rather. In the sixth episode, we'll be adding and managing suppliers. And then in the sixth and in the seventh episode, we'll be dealing with drugs, that is entering or adding the drugs into the system, and also managing the drugs in terms of editing, in terms of deleting the drugs. We'll also be dealing with the expired drugs in the 8th episode, and in the last but not the least episode number 9, we'll be dealing with the billing system, that is where we'll be managing the transactions and what have you. So hope this is interesting, and without so much ado, let's just get started. Well, welcome to episode 7 of how to create a pharmacy management system. And so in this episode, as you can see, we'll be doing things slightly different from what we've been doing. We will be creating the login system for our pharmacy management system, just so that we can have a different taste of this whole system, because we've been just working on code that is helping us to insert data into the database. And so in this episode, I just want to take it a level higher, so that we can see even as you insert the data, what else can you be able to do with that specific data in terms of ensuring that that data is secure, because in this case we're working with a login system, which is like the guard to our whole system. So we need to be able to write some code that is going to ensure that the whole system is protected. And so because we have a lot of work to do, let's just get into it. And what you can see on the screen right now is the login system, or basically the login screen. As you can see, it just talks about welcome back. And so here we have options of logging with, which unfortunately for now they're not working, and we're not going to work on that at this specific episode, maybe in future. But what we'll be working with is now what we have at the bottom here, where of course you'll be inserting the username and the password. But if you don't have any account, we have an option of directing you to the sign up page, from where you can be able to register. So here you'll be able to put in your username, your password, and of course confirm the password, and of course you're just going to sign up. And if you already have the credentials and by any chance you find yourself here, then you just click on the sign in, and of course you'll be taken to the sign in page. So now the code behind all of this is now what we have here. So basically this is the sign up code. So this is just the HTML part of it, of course with some Tailwind CSS classes, just to style it a little bit. And again, we are not going to work on the HTML and the Tailwind CSS. We're just going to work on the PHP, just making the whole login system dynamic. So that's the sign up, and in this we have the login. So this is the login page. So basically, as you can see, apart from everything else that we have being part of this login page, is the form, and this is the one that we will be focusing on as of now, because as you know, a form will be used to just collect data, and in PHP we will be passing it from one page to another. So in this case, we are having the form here, and we're having the inputs. In this case there are just two, that is the username and we have the password. And if you have been following this tutorial, you already know that for you to be able to pass information from one page to another in PHP using forms, you need to have the input, and the input needs to have the name, as you can see here, being one of the attributes that you're going to use, and which is going to be used to grab that information that the user is going to provide. So we already have that there, so that's the username and the password. And of course now down here we're having the button, which of course is of type submit, and the name is submit. That ensures that when that button is clicked, it is executed. Like this information that is stored in these two input fields is going to be passed, but where is it going to be passed? So we're going to provide where it will be passed in this action attribute. So this is in the form. Of course we should have it with the method of post, as you can see, because when you're passing information using forms, you're just going to pass it using two ways, that is post or get. So in this case we'll be using the post, and so that's why we have the method of post as post. And then here we're going to provide the location where the information is going to be passed, and so that's what we'll be calling the register inc.php. So that's a page that we are going to create right now, and that's what we're going to start with. So I'm just going to come here, and I want to go to the includes real quick, in the includes folder. And in the include folder, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it sorry, I got that long, because this one is the IDEX, but I want us to start with the sign up first. So sorry for the confusion, but everything that I was explaining is the same, even with the sign up page, because we're having the username and the password. The only addition we're having here is the confirm password. Yeah, the only addition we're having here is the confirm password, but as of the method is the same, and as of the action is the same. And so here we are going to provide where the information is going to be passed, in which case now I can head back to where I was going, that is the includes folder. So that now in the includes folder here I can create now the register inc, the register inc.php. So this is now where we are going to be taking the information that we have collected from here. We are going to verify it and enter it into the database. We're going to verify it and enter it into the database. So I need now to connect the two, that is the sign up and the register. And how I'm going to connect the two is by providing the path to this location here. So the path itself, as you can see over here, let me just look for that register, this one. So you can see the path is pages, and then includes, and then register inc.php. So I'm just going to provide that there. So pages includes / register inc.php. So because right now we are in the build, so we should get into the pages, that is the pages, then includes, and then get to the register inc.php. And so now we have the two connected, and what will even make them work, or what will be initializing the connection, is this submit button that we have here, that has the type of submit and the name submit. So right now I can just write a simple code like we've been doing previously, just to test whether what we have done will work. So we're just going to go to the inc.php, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to of course have the PHP tag here, and then I'm going to have an if statement. So this if statement basically is going to test whether the button was clicked or not. So for the condition, I'm just going to talk about if it's set, and what will be set in this case is the method that we're using to pass the information. So I'm going to talk about the post, and then I'm going to have some square brackets, and in here I'm going to have the submit. So basically this line is saying if the submit button is clicked, then just do something. So what it's going to do is what we're going to have as the code inside here. So I can just come and say echo, and maybe I can say I was clicked. So yeah, so basically now that will help us to know whether this button is working, the button submit, and this method post. So this one is going to come in handy later when we'll be collecting this information, but for now this submit button is the one that we want to test to see whether these two pages are connected successfully. So I'm just going to go back to my browser here and refresh everything. Then after I refresh, I can just click on I need to go to the sign up because this is a sign in. So here I can just click on the sign up, and as you can see I'm taken to the register inc.php, and we have that statement echoed there, I was clicked. So everything is working fine, and so now we can continue to add more code in the register inc.php. So what I'm just going to do real quick here is to comment that out, and then the next thing that I want to do is to connect to the database. So I'm just going to come and talk about require, and I'm going to require a file that we have called con.php. And if this is your first time that you're viewing this, because you might just be interested with the login system, within our system we have a file called con.php, and as you can see this is one that contains all the params to connect to the database. So instead of writing all of this code here, we just have it in a separate page, and then we are just requiring all that here. So now, hoping that that is clear, we're just going to move on to the next thing. So here, just for the sake of understanding, we can just talk about connect to a database. Okay, so now the next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm now going to collect the information from the register form and store them in variables. So I'm going to have the first variable as a username. I'm going to have the second variable as a password, and I'm going to have the third variable as a confirm password. So I'm now going to use this specific line here to collect the information, because the moment I clicked the submit button, in a way this post method is going to store some information, because basically what we are doing is we are passing the information from the register.php through the HTTP post method, as you can see here. So this is an associative array of variables passed to the current script via the HTTPS, and so because now the information is being passed through here, I'm going to grab this whole line and I'm just going to have it here. And so in this, I'm just going to set it to be equal to that, and so here I'm just going to check this to be equal to username, because you can remember that here we are having an input field that has the name of username. So this name that was inputted in this field was grabbed by this name, and we are passing that through the HTTP, and that is now what we are able to get it here because of this specific post method. So I'm going to repeat that to the list. So I'm just going to grab that, and before I grab it, I'm going to have a semicolon, and then now I can grab it, and so is equals to, and here I can say is equals to, like that. And so now I'm just going to change this to be equal now to password, and this one to be equal to confirm password. So now I have the information stored in variables, because I might not be able to use the information or the data in this form, and so I'm storing it in a variable so that I can now be able to reuse that information in whatever part of this page or in this specific system, basically this form or this page. So I can be able to call the variable, and I can be able to get that information. So now I have the information, but before I even continue, I would like to write some few error handlers that are just going to ensure that one, we don't have two usernames existing in the database, and we don't have a user entering empty data into the database, like they've not entered the confirm password or they've not entered the username. So we want to ensure that they've provided all the information as it is required. So I'm just going to come here and talk about error handlers. And one of the error handlers that I'm going to have here is the check of whether the user has skipped any specific field. So I'm going to have an if statement here, and within the condition I'm just going to have a field, and this will be one empty, because we want to test whether a field or an input is empty. And so how we are going to test that is by saying empty, and then whatever we want to check, if it is empty, and that is the username, because remember we have stored the username here. So if whatever was passed through this post method is nothing, like nothing was inputted in that box, then it means it will be empty, and we are going to detect it at this specific point. So other than the username, we also want to check whether the password was also empty or is empty. So I'm going to talk about a password, and also I have one more field, so empty. And so if what is empty, so in this case it will be the, sorry, I'm forgetting something here. It should be a variable, so that is the confirm password. So it should be a variable including this, because we are checking what we have stored here. Yeah, so if that is empty, then we should be able to notify the user that there is a field that they have not provided or entered. So how I'm going to have that is by redirecting them back to another page. So in this case I'm going to talk about header, and so I'm going to like set them to so I'm going to talk about location. Sorry, this should be location, and then I should take them back to register. It should be register, or rather this one we're talking about sign up.php. so I want to take them back to the sign up.php, from where now I'm going to tell them what is up, like what is the error. So here I can have a question mark and then error, and then I can say is equals to empty, and empty field, and maybe I can provide the username if that was detected. So I can say username is equals to, it's not a must, but I'm just like showing you that you can be able to have it here. So I'm going to concatenate, I don't know how to pronounce that, but like connect them together. And so how I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a period, and then I'm going to have the username. So what this basically is going to do is it's going to echo this error with whatever username that was provided. So if you want it to be like that, but it's not a must. If you don't want it to be like that, you can just provide the error, like tell the person one of the fields that they have skipped a certain input. Yeah, so and then after that, of course, we should not continue with anything else, so we should basically exit. So that's the first, and of course, as you can see, it's just checking whether we have any empty fields. So the next thing that we also want to do is to check for invalid fields, because they might have entered something but it's invalid. So here we are going to talk about check for invalid fields. So in this case now I'm just going to talk about else, and that will be else if. So else if, and so the code will be here, because we will be basically checking the username, whether the username that they have provided is a valid one. And so we are going to use a variable called or something, or a statement that we call preg match. And so I'm just going to talk about if it is not, that is exclamation mark preg underscore match. And so I'm going to have this information in I'm going to have the two opening brackets, and within that I'm going to have two quotes. And so I'm going to provide this, so I'm going to have a /, and then also going to have this other symbol. Where do I have it on my keyboard now? Oh, sorry, it is Shift 6. Yes, and so I'm going to have the square brackets. So within that, I'm going to say that we should have at least letters A to Z, that is lowercase, and also uppercase, as well as numbers 0 to 9. So if we have anything else apart from that, then that will not be a valid username. So I'm going to have an asterisk and then / again, and that's it. So that's basically how we are going to check whether the username is valid, and that's basically to mean that it should at least have this character. So if it is anything beyond that, then we're not going to accept it, because it might be something that is going to interfere with the data in the database. And so of course now in that case I'm also going to provide the variable username, because that's basically what we are testing. So if anything is detected there, if we don't get what we expect there, then we are going to again redirect the user. So I'm going to talk about location, and I will be redirecting them back to the signup.php, and we should tell them the error what we have detected. So I'm just going to say is equals to invalid fields, and as usual we are going to have the username, and so that is the variable username. Yeah, and that's it. So that's just to check for invalid fields. And so if that happens, it means there's an error, so we're not going to continue with the code execution, and so we're going to exit until the user provides the correct information. Alright, so now we have checked the username, so we also need to check the password, if the password is going to match, because remember we are requesting the user to provide the password twice, so we are going to match those two passwords that they have provided. So in this case we will check if the password match. So how are we going to have that? So we continue with our if statement. So here it will be again another else if, and so the condition will be the variable password, and so we are saying if it is not equal to the confirmed password. So in that case, now it means that the user has maybe missed maybe when typing the second or maybe the first password. So we are again going to redirect them, and so just to make our work easier, I'm just going to grab this because we have typed it several times, and I'm going to have it here, and so I'm just going to change the error here to say that the password does not match. That is the error. Password do not match. Yes, and of course, as you'd expect, we are going to exit that, and so we're not going to continue with the execution until that is prepared. The final error handler we're going to have here is to check whether the username is taken or not. So I'm going to say check if the username is taken or not. So we continue with our if statement again, and so this one will be else. And so here the code will be slightly different because we'll be try to get into contact with the database, see the data that we have in the users table, to check whether whatever username that the user has provided, whether we have a similar one there. So I'm going to write an SQL statement, so SQL that is going to help me to select, and I'm going to select the username from the table users. Remember, we have created a database that has that table of users. As you can see, right now it is empty because we have not provided anything. So we are selecting information from that table, and so we are saying where username is equals to. So instead of having the variable like we have been having here as a second layer of security, you're not going to put that specific name or that variable, but we're just going to have a question mark. So that question mark is going to represent this specific variable, and so just to ensure that the user doesn't enter anything strange, we're just going to have the question mark there, and so the system is going to understand what we mean by that specific question mark there, which should just basically represent this variable as I've mentioned. So in that case, now I'm going to have st empty. This stands for statement, and so basically I'm just going to initialize a statement, and so here we will be writing the MySQLi statement initialization. And the MySQLi statement initialization is a function built into PHP that initializes the statements and returns an object suitable for MySQL STMT prepare. It takes one argument, which is the MySQL connection object returned by the MySQL connect function. So this function is used to prepare an SQL statement for execution and can be reused multiple times to execute the same or different SQL statements. That's what we're just going to have here. So I'm just going to say is equals to, and so I'm just going to write forget that. So MySQLI underscore stmt underscore int, which is starting for initialization. And so here, as you can see, it is taking only one variable, which is the connection to the database. So we said by just writing the con, we are referencing this one here, because in our con.php here we are having the con, so basically we are referencing the whole of this. Yes, so hoping that that is clear, so we can just get rid of this to avoid distractions. And so moving on swiftly, we can now have the next one. As you have seen, that is going to help us to work with the MySQL statement prepare, because we've just said that the MySQL SMT initialization function initializes a statement and return an object for MySQLi STMT prepare. Okay, so we are going also now to have the MySQLi STMT prepare. When it comes to PHP MySQL prepared statement, basically this one helps in what we call the SQL injections, like because we are providing the user a platform to enter data into a database, and so the user can just decide that they're just going to enter some data that is going to jeopardize, or that is going to like drop the database, so that they can be able to gain whatever they want to gain. So to be able to avoid the SQL injections, one of the things that we can do is to write the PHP MySQL prepaid statement. So prepaid statements are very useful against SQL injections and prepaid statements and bound parameters. So a prepaid statement is a feature used to execute the same or similar SQL statement repeatedly with high efficiency. So prepared statements basically works like we will have the prepare, which is an SQL statement template created and sent to the database with certain values left unspecified, which are called parameters, and they are labeled using question marks with an example of like say insert into my guest values, and then as you can see we are having a question mark there like we have done in our case. And then we are going to have the database faces, compilers, and performs query optimization on the SQL statement template and stores the results without executing it. And then finally there is the execution, which at a later time the application binds the values to the parameters and the database executes the statement. So the application may execute the statement as many times as it wants with different values. So the reason as to why we are writing all this is just to avoid the SQL injection, where a user can provide some data or enter some data into the database with the name of dropping that database, or with the name of penetrating into that database without the consent of course the owner. So in this case now I'm going to say that if, or basically I'm going to have an if statement, and so I'm going to say if, and I'm just going to say it's not. So when we write the exclamation mark, we mean it's not. And so I'm saying that if it is the MySQLi underscore stmt underscore prepare, And so this statement is going to take two arguments. So the first one will be the statement. Remember, it is the connection to the database. As you can see here, we initialized that and stored that there. So we are having that, and so we're also going to have the SQL, that is the variable SQL, which is what we are having here. So we're just preparing this, like we have seen. The MySQL statement prepare is just going to prepare the prepared statements and store them for execution, which might happen later. So we'll be executing this at a later time in this specific code. So we're just going to have that there, and of course we have the semicolon. And so we are now saying if this one doesn't work successfully, like we are unable to select any data from the database or any username from the database, or maybe the connection to the database is otherwise not working, so we are going to have that as an error. And so we are going to inform the user that something is up, like they need to check on something. And so we are going to redirect them to, let's say, sign up php, and so this one will be error and is equals to. In this case, we are not going to talk about the username and everything. We're just going to tell them that this is an SQL error, or anything that you want to write there that will be maybe more specific for the user to understand what is happening. So in fact, this one I can call it error 1, because we might have another one as we continue. So I'm going to have that there, and then after that I'm just going to exit, or we're not going to continue with that anymore because we're having that error, and we may not want to continue because it may just jeopardize the whole system. So that's it. Basically, it is just helping us to check whether we have a username, but we have not yet confirmed, because this one will be if there is an error. So if there is an error, then we're just going to add everything at that point. But what if these two statements ran successfully? So if they ran successfully, therefore we're just going to talk about else down here. So the code that we're going to write here is now first of all abiding the prepared statements, abiding the statements, and so I'm just going to have this statement like MySQLI underscore statement underscore abide underscore parameters, so param. And so the parameters that I'm binding is first of all, or rather this statement is going to take these arguments. One will be the statement itself, that is what we have here, that's the connection to the database. And then I'm going now to have the variables that I'm binding. And so in this case it is just one, so I'm just going to write S to represent that one, statement, or that I'm binding. Yeah, so these what we're writing here, basically they are not statements, but they are functions. Sorry, they are basically fanctions. And so this whole function, the MySQL STMT bind param is a function that binds the parameters to the SQL query and tells the database what the params are. So like for example, the SSS argument list the types of data that the params are. So the S character tells MySQL that that parameter is a string. So if you're working with any other types of data, then you can be like talking about I for integer, D for double, and S for string, and B for block. So in this case, because in our case it is a username that is a string, that's why we are using S instead. That's why in this specific area here we are using an S. Okay, so a point of correction, all what we have been writing here are not statements, but they are functions. They are functions built in PHP that will help us to carry out different functions. So I'm going to have yet another function here that is going to bind the information that we want. So when we talk about this function, which is called MySQL SMT, in fact, let me just write it here before I explain it. That is MySQLI. Sorry, you're going to forgive me here because yes, I don't know what's happening today. So MySQLI underscore STMT underscore bind underscore param. So this is a function built in PHP, and this function binds the parameters to the SQL query and tells the database what the params are. So the S, in which case it can be more than one, depending on how many variables you are binding. These arguments list the types of data the parameters are. So the S itself is a character that tells MySQL that the parameter is a string. So if you're working with a different type of data type, then for example it could be an integer. In that case, you're going to replace S with I, and if they are more than one, of course you're just going to talk about I, depending on how many they are. If it is double, then you're going to use D. In our case, we're using S because it's a string, because you're talking about a username, and then B will be for the blog. And if it is more than one, you're just going to have the number, the B representing the number of variables that you're using. For example, in this case, we have first name, last name, email, and so we're having the S's, and because they are strings, we are having them as S's. So that's the same thing that we want to come and have here, and so I'm just going to have the brackets there, and this takes the arguments. The first argument is STMT, and the other one is now whatever we are binding. In this case, we only have one, that is the username, and so I'm just going to have S, which represents a string, and then after that I'm now going to have what I'm binding, which is the username. So if there were two, then I would have presented that there, and also have another S for the same. So I'm going to add that there, and so now I'm going to execute. So I'm going to have another function that is going to now execute the statement, because remember we said that the MySQL statement prepare is created so that we can prepare for execution. So I'm going to have now the MySQLI underscore STMT underscore execute, and so now this is going to have only one argument, which is the statement. That is what we are executing, because we initialized it on top here, and so in these lines we are expecting that they all went well successfully, and so we are now executing them down here, because you can remember that we also did the prepare, the initialization, we have binded them, and so now down here we are executing them. So I'm going to add that, and finally I'm going to have the MySQL underscore TMT underscore store, which basically like is going to store the results. And so this one is going to take the argument STMT. So MySQLI underscore STMT underscore store underscore result, not result. Okay, so as the name suggests, that function basically is like storing the results that were executed. So now finally we are going now to get into the database and see did we get any information. So I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to call it low count, or call it low count. Is the name itself should tell you what that is going to do. So basically it's going to count the number of rows that we have in the table's users, and so I'm going to have this statement here, that is the MySQL SMTP num rows. So this is a function that is going to help us to count the number of rows. And remember, now we're going to, or this is going to take only one argument, which is the STMT, which is where we are having all the information that we are collecting from the database. And so now we're going to create or have an if statement here, and so this if statement is going to help us to see if we have anything in the database. And so we're going to say if row count is greater than 0, it means we have some data, or we have at least one row that contains some data. If it is equal than 1, then it means that we have some username that is similar to what the user has entered, because what we expect is that whatever the user has entered should not match anything that we have in the table's users already. And so if we have, then it should be like that's a duplicate. And so we are going to redirect the user again and tell them that and tell them that the username is already taken. So I'm going to talk about a location, and this will be sign up .php, and so this one will be question mark error, and it will be, the error will be username. It can be anything, username taken, and as usual just have the username, just telling them that this was the username that you had entered, and so that is already taken. So maybe you can change it to another name, because you cannot have a duplicate. And so now we should exit immediately, not continue with the rest of the code. So otherwise, if all that information or the username is not matching anything that we have in the database, then we can now insert data into the database. So here I can talk of insert data into the database. So how are we going to insert the data into the database? Very simple. Just going to use an SQL statement. So I'm just going to talk about else, because I want to continue with the if statement here. So I'm going to talk of else, and so here I'm going to create a variable called SQL. It will be equal to insert into, and we are inserting into the table users. And so this is the information that we are inserting. So the first one is the username, and the other one is a password. And so we're going to substitute this with the question mark. So I'm going to talk about values, and I'm going to have the question marks instead. So instead of having the variables themselves, we're going to substitute that with the question marks, and so add that statement. So I'm going to have a statement is equals to MySQLi MySQLI underscore stmt. I'm going to initialize it again, so I'm going to have this function initialization, and we said that this one is going to take the variable con or connection to the database, and I'm now going to again prepare the statement, and this is again, as we said, to avoid SQL injections. So I'm going to say if, well, I'm going to create yet another if statement. So this one will be if it is not equal to MySQLI underscore stmt underscore prepare. Then this one takes the arguments stmt and the SQL. This should be a variable SQL. Yes, so if that is not working, then we should just likely delete the user that we are having a problem with the connection to the database, and also as a result we are not able to get to pull or insert any data into the database, because we should first of all establish a connection, and that's why we are having this line. And so if that is not happening, then we are not able to insert anything. And so how we are going to know that that has happened is by this function, this prepare SQL statement prepare. And so we are now going to say that or basically just redirect the user, because we've noticed that maybe a connection to the database was not established successfully. So location, and this one will be again a sign up.php, and then the error will be SQL error 2. We had a 1 on top there. This is for the this is the second one, so that if we get the error, we're able to know which line has an issue. So as usual, and as you'd expect, we're just going to exit immediately. But else, if this worked successfully, then we are just going to go ahead and insert the data into the database. Before we insert the data into the database, and also as another layer of security, we are going to create a hashed password so that the password is encrypted. So I'm going to talk of create a hashed password. So how do we create a hashed password? So here I'm just going to continue with the if statement, so I would say else. So that is if this one worked, if this one if this worked, okay, and so we didn't go to this, okay, so we are now saying that, oh yeah, this was successful, this was successful. So before you enter the data into the database, you want to hash that password, and so I'm going to create a variable called hashed pass. So this one will be equal to, so I'm going to have this function that helps to create a hashed password. So I'm just going to, or we have it as a hash underscore, password underscore hash, sorry, and this takes the arguments, the password that we already have, and then we are going to, for us to have the password hashed, we're going to type this. So password default. So that's basically going to hash our password or encrypt it, so that it's not like easily understood. Like you cannot just look at it and know what it represents. and so now I'm going to, of course, bind that, or bind the username and the hashed password. So I'm going to have that function that is going to help me to bind them together. So I'm going to talk about my MySQLI underscore stmt underscore bind prepare, or parameters, sorry, we are binding the parameters, and so this one will be stmt, and then we're going to have the variables that we are binding. We are binding two strings, so I'm going to have sss, and those two that I'm binding are the username and the hash pass. And so now after that, I'm now going to execute that. So I'm going to create a variable, a function, sorry, that is going to do the execution. So this will only take the argument stmt, and after that, now the user will have entered the data into the database, and in that case they will have successfully registered for an account. And so I'm going to redirect them to I'm going to redirect them to the index.php, which is outside of the pages, outside of includes folder and outside of the pages. So that is index.php, and we can also talk about success is equals to registered, and we don't have to exit, because now that should be the last thing that we are going to have there. So looks like there is a certain line that we did close properly. So that's what I'm trying to get here, because at the end of the day, down here should have 5 of these curly brackets. So the first one here should end up here. So that should be, wait a minute, that one should be there, and then okay, looks like we are having this one there. So that's okay. So if we have this one here, should close there. Have this one goes in there. Then we have this one. We should have another one closing, because I don't have one that closes this. No. Should have one that closes. Oh, but wait a minute. Why do we have these in yellow? Yeah, we're having an error somewhere. Okay. Okay, and then we have this one goes in there. You can also try to use the colors, because here we need to have a yellow, a purple, a blue, another yellow, is that coming from? As far as I'm concerned, we have closed all these curly brackets. So if else, if is the code else, if closed else, if else. Having it at the bottom, if else, have it there, you have these on, then we have these on. Okay, let's just test and see if that is working first before we start judging it here, and maybe it could be working. Yeah, because upon comparing the code that we've written and what I already have, the original one looks like we need 5 curly brackets at the bottom there, but yeah, let's just try. We can just talk of 1 2 3 1 2 3, then we see the error that we're going to get. Yeah, so it talks of unexpected variable, that is SMT at row number 32. I think that's going to help us quickly. So this one, oh yeah, we didn't close this one here, so that's okay. So we can just try that again, just refresh it, provide the user and at row number 32. I think this is where now we'll be headed to know where the issue is. So it's talking of now row number 36, unexpected errors. We're having this one going to the very bottom. Oh yeah, I get it now. So if here we didn't open a curly bracket like that, so that now at the bottom here we have one that is going to close that, one that is going to close this one here. Yeah, so this is what was missing. I was not able to track it, but yeah, let's see if that solves the problem. So and you can have any password, maybe 321 321. Okay, still having the same issue. Unless we have not saved. Let me refresh it again, because I do hope that that should solve the issue. There is more into that. Oh, just a minute. This one should be there. Oh, sorry. Oh, we should also not add this. Sorry, should be like that. No semicolon, because you're not adding that statement yet, or that line. So back and refresh. User 321. Okay, so now we move on to something else that's on row number. Oh, we did a typo here. That is STM. It should be STMT. On row number 55. This one STMT. Okay, that's resolved. So let's see what next. There we are, registered. So let's check whether that was inserted. So refresh that. Yeah, and as you can see, we're having the user here, and the password is encrypted. It is 123, but this is now what we have being encrypted. So now we can now be able to work on the login, because as you can see now we are successfully redirected to the login system, where we can now be able to do that. So real quick, and because time is not on our side, we're just going to now head back to the IDEX, and just like we have worked with the sign up, we'll do the same with the login. So here I'm just going to first of all go to the includes here, and I'm going to, in the includes folder, create maybe a file called login inc.php. And so real quick here, I'm just going to talk of link the two, that is the index.php with the log in inc.php. So this one is in pages, in the includes, and that is the login inc.php. So let me just remove that to avoid distraction. So everything else is working fine. I have the method post, I have the action, I have the input having the names that is going to help me collect the username and the password. This name is very, very important. And then I have the button that has a type of submit and the name submit. So that's working very fine. So let me test whether that is working fine. So I'm going to of course have the PHP here. So if it's set, this one should be post, and square brackets, in quotes, submit, sorry, in lowercase. So the code here will first of all just echo to see if that is working. So I can say script, oops, yeah, and so let's see. So do a refresh, and try to enter some data. It can be anything. In this case, we just want to check if that was clicked, and that is not working because of the path. It's a bit broken. So let me see. Login that is in pages includes login inc.php pages. Well, what did we do wrong? Action pages includes, so we want to come here. So pages, oops, we have used the long whatever, should be backslash, oops, yeah. Oh, wait a minute, what's wrong? Not forward. Wait a minute, something is up. This looks like something simple, but someone is unable to get what is the issue. Log.inc. What's happening here? This one is includes login. Pages includes login. Oh, that's a bit strange. Let me see. Some simple stuff here, but just trying to mess us up. We try to see. Grab this, and I'm going to have it here as him not to figure out what is the issue with that, because we are having the two in the same place. But let me just see if I say a log. Oh, it's the spelling of the login. Login inc.php. Login. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's the naming of this that is wrong. So what I'm thinking is not what I'm writing. So it should be inc. Yeah, so here should be inc. It's okay, so I can get rid of that, hide that, and so now quickly this one should work fine. So enter. Let's just get back there. So yeah, I was clicked. Oops. Yeah, that was the purpose of the oops. Okay, but we now know that that can happen, and so that's how you can fix that. So let's just continue. Okay, that's just an excuse anyway. Okay, so let's continue. So we are now writing the script that is going to help us to log in into the system now that we have successfully registered. And so one of the things that I'm going to do before I forget is to require the connection to the database. So here I'm going to have the con.php, and of course here I can say connect to the database. And so now after that, now I'm going to collect the information from the form. So again, I'm going to have the if statement. So this one will be if it's set, and of course we are passing it through the post method as we did. So I'm going to have the post method, and of course the button name is submit. So submit, And so now need to grab that information and store it in variables. So I'm going to talk of the variable username, and the variable password. So as I showed you, I always grab this just to make my life easier. So I'm going to assign that to that, and I'm going to change the submit to this, so that now the username that I collect through this method, the HTTP, is stored here. And so again, I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to assign it to that, and before I forget, I'm going to have the semicolons to add that. Okay, so I now already have the username and the password that I've collected from the database. Now I need to do a few checks, and the first one is check if the fields are empty. Okay, so just like we did with the register, so I'm just going to say else, and so you're just going to use the if statement again, and here we're just going to have the condition as empty. And so what is empty? That is the username, as well as the password. So empty password. And so now what should be the code in that case? So in that case, we're just going to redirect the user, of course, back to the index.php, and tell them that whatever they have provided is not correct, or like they have not provided anything. So location, and this one will be, we need to get out of the includes, get out of the pages. And so here we are going to find the index.php with the error being equal to empty fields. And so we should exit that, because we don't want to continue with that, because we have something wrong. So after that, now the next thing that we are going to do is to check if the password provided matches what we have in the database. So just like we did with the username, so I'm going to correct the information that I already have in the database and match with whatever the user has provided. So this will be SQL statement, which will be, of course, select, and we are selecting all, and we're having this from users, and this is where the username is what the user has provided. So for security purposes, we're not going to have a variable there. And then, of course, now we're going to have the prepared statement, or prepared statement, just to work against the or something that is going to help us work against the SQL injection. So this will be my MySQLI underscore stmt prepare. And this, as you already know, is going to take two arguments, that is stmt, and also the SQL, which is these two that we have on top there. So now that that is prepared, we're going to execute it later, but for now we're going to check to see, oh sorry, we forgot to start with the function that we should start with here, which is the initialization. We cannot prepare it without initializing, so we need to initialize it there. And so here we are only going to have one argument. This function MySQLi stmt initialization is only going to take the argument con, which of course will help us to connect to the database. And so now here I'm going to check if the two worked properly. And so here I'm now going to have the MySQLi statement prepare. So I'm going to prepare it, and in this case I'm just going to see if it is not like if the two didn't work as expected. So I'm going to say MySQLi underscore stmt underscore prepare. And so this is now going, it is the one that is going to take the stmt in the SQLi or SQL, sorry. And so given that that will be false, like it's like not what we expect, like this one did not learn successfully, these two statements or lines. So we are now going to redirect the user back to the header, or sorry, not the header, but back to the index.php, and tell them that something happened, and we should be able to tell them like what is up. So in the error here, I'm just going to talk about SQL error, maybe I can say one. And of course now we need to exit, so we don't want again the user to continue. So here we're saying that we didn't connect to the database, and so we are not able to correct any username, and so we cannot be able to match to see if the password matches what we have in the database. So we exit, but if these two lines ran successfully, we established a secure connection to the database, and we are able to collect a user or some data from the user's table, then we need to continue. And so now we are just going to bide and also do the execution. So I'm going to have the first one here, which is MySQLi, and that's called stmt underscore param. So we're just biding the parameters. MySQLi, and so this one should take the arguments stmt, and we should also have what we are binding. In this case is only one parameter, which is a string, and here we are going to have whatever we are binding, which is the username, and then that's it. I don't know why this one is appearing with this color. MySQLi underscore stmt. Oh, sorry, we are missing something, which is very, very important, the bind. Yeah. And so now that they are binded, we can now execute. So MySQLi underscore statement execute. So this one should take one argument, which is the variable stmt or statement. So now we're going to have the results. So results, and so these ones, for us to be able to have that, we're going to have the function MySQLi underscore stmt underscore get underscore result. And so this one again should have one argument, which is stmt. So this one is going now to help us to like get the result and store them in that variable called results, all information that we expect from the database, and store that information here. And so now that we have it stored here, we can be able like to reuse it anywhere we want. And so in that case, we can now come and have an if statement, in which case we're going to have the condition as if low is equals to MySQLi underscore. So here I'm just going to have the function MySQLi fetch a sock. So the MySQLi fetch a sock, and so this one will take one argument, which is the result. So that will help me to fetch the data from the database, as the name suggests. And so now store that information here, because this was just for binding this data, in which case in this I'm just binding one. I only have one string, and now I'm creating a variable called results, where I'm getting the results. And so here I'm storing or getting the information from the database, and trying to store them in a variable called low, because remember this STMT or this statement just was helping me to just establish a connection. And so and because I've binded the data here, I cannot be able to communicate with the database and get that specific data. And so now with this statement, I'm now able to fetch that information with the help of this STMT, which is the connection to the database. And all these functions that I'm creating here is just to ensure that I avoid SQL injections, so that I avoid, or like just make the system to be as secure as possible. So yeah, that's the main purpose of having all of this. Otherwise you can just do it straight away, just fetch the information from the database, like we do when we are like fetching data, like with the previous episodes that we've read. We didn't have all of this, but in this case, because it's a login system, we need to ensure that we are secure. And also with those other cases, if you want to be like ensure that the data is securely or is protected, then you can always have these functions just to ensure that you are secure with your data as the users enter and pull data from the database, to and from the database. So I can now continue to check for the password. Again, we need to because basically the purpose of us lighting all of these, as you can see on top here, is to check if the password provided matches. So but we needed to collect the data from the database and collect it or fetch it securely, and so that's why we are lighting all these functions here. But the main purpose of all of that is to check for or if the password is matching. So I'm just going to come and say is equals to, and this one will be a function called password underscore verify. And so this one is going to take the arguments password, because basically that's what we are checking. And so because we stored that here, and we did not like create a reasonable variable for it, so how we are going to call it is by talking about low, and then square brackets, single quotes, and then a password, just like we usually do previously with others. Like in this case, you can even come down here and create a variable called password and set it to be equal to the whole of this line here. Yeah, but that will be just some other extra lines that we don't want to write. Yeah, because it's not like necessary. And so now you want to check if that statement is true or false, which will decide our next action. So you say if pass check is equals false, we want to redirect the user to another page or somewhere, and tell them that that's bad logging. So I can just come and grab these just to make it easy, because you can even have this below the below the form, so that the user, or it will just appear where do we have that, it will just appear down here. And just to make things simple, I'll just redirect the user here, and I'm just going to talk about error is equals to bad login, because this video is already very long to start adding all those other information. So that is if it is false, but what if it is true? So we should also be in a position to direct the user on what or what will happen next, or just determine what is going to happen next. So here I'm going to talk of else if, in fact. So else if, wait a minute, let me just get rid of that. This one should be else if, like that, so that we can have a place for condition, in which case it will be pass check if it is equal true. And so here we can create sessions as we would want. In my case, maybe I can just create one session for the username, but you can create as maybe one for the ID, one for the email, or any other. But in this case, let's just create one global maybe variable for the username, so that maybe we can tell them welcome, and then we are going to use whatever username they have provided. And so session, and so this one will be, we just call it a session username, and so this one will be equal to so I'm just going to grab this one, have it here, and instead of password it will be username. Remember, all the information that we fetched from the database from the table users was stored in this variable called low, so we're just specifying the specific data that we want in that case. So that being created, we can now redirect the user back to whatever page we want them to go into. So in our case, let me check, it should be it should be dashboard, should take them to the dashboard. So here I'm going to just to make my work easier, I'll grab that, and then I'm going to have that there. And so this one will be dashboard, and then this one, instead of being error, it will be success. And so here we can tell them that log. So you can just have it like that. Yeah, so hoping that we load everything properly. Let's now check to see if that is working. So we're just going to come back here and refresh. Now we try to log in. So the username is user, and then the password was 321. We try to sign in, and on line 29 we are having an issue. So line 29, oh sorry, this one should be equal sorry, yeah, should be like that, but this one should be a variable, sorry. Okay, so we try again. Yeah, now we are not even having any error, which is very strange.